Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 3 Point Weekly. We are in through the majority of the first week of the NBA season. The Philadelphia 76ers and the LA Lakers are struggling. The Utah Jazz are 3-0, just as everyone expected. It's been the typical NBA with a ton of surprises to begin, but we're going to start off with Gabe with one of the surprises, his pick to win the conference, the Philadelphia 76ers. Harden has looked better, and Embiid has had his moments, but they have lost to what of many people would consider to be the worst team in the league in the San Antonio Spurs. So let's hear it, Gabe. What's going on in Philly?
Hey man, you remember a couple years ago when the Celtics lost a couple in a row to start the season, and then they won 17 games in a row? I mean, I'm just saying, Philly still has time to turn it around. I think you guys are overreacting just a little bit, but I will say overall, even if they don't finish as the 1 seed, Embiid is still putting up MVP type numbers, just like I predicted. And along with that, I definitely have more stock in my other 1 seed, who is playing right now, undefeated and going absolutely crazy. Without Kawhi even in the game, the Clippers. That's
Is Embiid putting
Embiid.
up MVP numbers?
I think a nice little 40 piece when you play 3 games. I think that sets your stat line up pretty well to put an MVP type season up.
His first 2 games were pretty bad, though. First
All
two
right.
games were pretty bad.
They were.
I
Against
think
the
you're
Bucks,
overreacting a little bit.
he went scoreless in the second half. The Celtics did not play too well against them either.
Okay,
I'm just
so
saying.
you're talking
I'm
about
just
the
being
Bucks.
honest.
You're talking about the Bucks and the Celtics, who have Giannis, and then if it's not Giannis on the Celtics, they just got the Celtics defense. And so, yeah, his numbers aren't going to look as padded against those teams, but I think the more that he plays against some more regular level teams, not literally the best of the best defenses or defenders, I think we can see a lot closer to that 40 than the bad games.
That's cool and all, but he is an MVP candidate, so I can't use that excuse for him against playing against great teams.
Yeah. I was going to echo similar thoughts. He will pad his numbers more against weaker teams, but like you say, he's an MVP caliber player, and he doesn't get the cop out of it's a good team, so I'm going to have a bad game. He's got to show up every night.
Hey, man.
And specifically defensively, he has not been anywhere near an MVP caliber player yet this year. He's looked very lethargic and poor of effort this year so far on the defensive end, and that's at least to me been the most concerning part. Is okay, some off nights to start the year offensively, but he does not look engaged offensively at all.
All right, see, you guys do bring up very good points, poking some flaws in the argument. I think there definitely are players that have played a lot better to start the season. Just for my narrative's sake, I hope that those 40-point type games can bring Embiid back into it, because I like being a little accurate. But something I wanted to bring up and ask you guys about that was just kind of on my mind today. Do y'all remember when Bam Adebayo said he was about to take 18 shots a game?
Of course,
yeah.
Because
I figured it was gonna be Cap. I figured it was Cap, man.
I'm seeing these Heat stat lines, and it's not close to that.
He is barely taking 10 shots per game for the first 3 games of the season, which is his lowest total since the 2018-19 season.
And that was year 2 for him?
That was year 2.
Yeah.
He was not a starter at that point in time. Not full time.
We said their success really correlates with him and Tyler Hero, the steps that they're going to take this season, because obviously they didn't have a great offseason. And, when you do that, you pay guys like Tyler Hero. Bam's already making max money. You're expecting those guys to continue to get better as young dudes. And it's only a couple games in, but we're here to, overreact a little bit to the start of the season. Like you said, barely taking 10 shots a game. That's just not good enough for somebody that's an all-star, at least an all-star caliber player. And you're supposed to be at least the second best player in your team. That's just not acceptable, man. So he's got to step it up. He has to be a little more selfish. And I would like to see that from Bam. I think we would all like to see that. But, just you can't be out there just taking 10 shots a game and expect this Miami Heat team to be, successful in the regular season.
Yeah, like you say, Bam needs to be more aggressive. And there needs to be more of the directive from Miami, whether it be from a coaching standpoint, whether it be on the court in game from the players. There needs to be more of a want and a need to get Bam the ball and get him looks, because this Miami offense doesn't necessarily always revolve around getting certain guys looks. There's good ball movement. There's good player movement between Strus and Vincent and Duncan and Hero and Butler and Bam. There's a lot of guys taking shots, a lot of guys taking threes. But if you have a guy as talented as Bam, you need to make sure that you're getting him the ball in situations to score more often than him taking around 10 or 11 shots a game. So a lot of it does have to do with the aggression of Bam, and that certainly has to be included. But they need to make sure they're giving him the opportunity as well, because Bam isn't exactly going down and creating himself a shot from the perimeter. They need to get him the ball more. And I think that needs to be something they need to focus on as well for their success.
Yeah, this is a very extreme example, but when I was watching the Nuggets the other night, I just realized like how Jokic gets a lot of easy shots, even though he can't create. But they make it to where they put Jokic in good positions just to get like simple mismatches or on the roll, or even like just tip in rebounds. Like he gets a lot of those opportunities. And Bam is that type of player where he's very versatile on the offensive end of the floor. You can do a lot with him. So I think that's a good point, Devin. Like Miami, Coach Spoelstra has to do a better job of at least putting him in positions to where he kind of has to be aggressive and take those shots. Because I think once he's able to do that, maybe he'll have a little more confidence to start taking, just more shots because of his free will, just by getting set up for those easy opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what Toronto used to do with JV back in the day when JV was just starting to get into the lineup. Is every time start of the game, pretty much you could count on it pretty much every game. Lowry in the JV for some look, just to get him aggressive, get him scoring. And how they incorporate that in Miami remains to be seen, but they need to do something to that extent, because Bam is way more important to Miami than JV was for Toronto, and they need to make sure he's going on both ends.
Yeah, I think this team has been very to prediction up to this point, if that makes sense. I think we all saw the Bam stuff, and like you said, we all kind of thought it was a little cat that they're obviously beyond Jimmy. This team's wing depth and lack thereof is kind of showing. You can see that across the board. But then on the other hand, I think their backcourt has been looking pretty solid. Kyle Lowry, rough first game, but he's looked, at least in the last two games, a little bit better than most last season. And then obviously Tyler Heroes came in, kind of more of what we saw from him last year, just playing pretty well as a scorer across the board. And then Max Strus has had a couple solid games off the bench for them. So it's like backcourt kind of working. Jimmy, I mean, we know he's not the same player in the regular season as the playoffs, but doing some solid work. It's just those forwards and then Bam, where we really got to see that improve.
How have y'all felt about the Raptors so far? 2-1, pretty solid start. Had an opportunity
1-2.
Oh, my bad. 1-2. Had an opportunity to beat Brooklyn. That's why I'm thinking 2-1, because you guys had an opportunity to win that game. What are your thoughts so far on Toronto?
I haven't had any big problems with it. We're missing two key bench pieces right now in Chris Boucher and Otto Porter Jr. And our biggest weakness to start with off of the bench is shooting. We're missing arguably our two biggest shooters off of the bench. So all in all, I can't be too mad at it. The Raptors have one of the hardest schedules out of the gate, losing games on the road to Miami and Brooklyn. It is what it is. This first 10-game stretch, I looked at it at the start of the year and was like, if we can win 8, I'm more than happy with that. They've looked competitive. Most importantly, Barnes has looked good. He picked up an ankle injury the other night, but it looks like that's going to be relatively minor. Siakam has been just as good as he finished off last year. So signs look good. Defense looks active. There's still some things to nitpick at. OG trying to do a little bit too much at times. Some bench concerns with the point guard position still, but that's not anything that was unexpected. But with Otto Porter being back soon, Chris Boucher is expected to be back tomorrow night, I believe. Get a little bit more shooting back, get a little bit more depth back, and I think they're in a fine spot. I mean, none of us had super high expectations for Toronto, but I think they should be in the mix in the play-in tournament, and they look like they should be that type of team right now. If they're losing on the road to Miami and Brooklyn, but competitive, I got no problems with that.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of the same thing. It's like when your biggest kind of score differential is 4 points in any one game, I think that shows that, you're coming, you're bringing that fight, you're bringing that aggressiveness, and you're not just going away in any game, which I think is something good to see. Obviously, Pascal Siakam has been him, and then kind of beyond that, it seems like the Raptors are just being the Raptors. It's like somebody else is kind of stepping up and doing some other big things every game. And while that kind of anybody can pop off mentality is good sometimes, I think it's also sort of a lack of consistency across the board at the same time. So hopefully, once we get Scotty back healthy and he sort of continues to cement himself as maybe that second most consistent option next to Pascal, we'll see things continue to develop a little bit more.
Specifically on that note, I just want to mention that like Freddie has been very intentionally passive with his shot offensively so far this year, and so I expect that'll change and he'll become a bit more of that second guy too. But like he's shooting a bit under 10 shots per game so far this season, and that's not because of a lack of aggressiveness like we're seeing with Bam. That'll change. That's not typical of Freddie, but he's very much just been focusing on playmaking, distributing, getting other guys involved to start the year, which I can't really be too mad at from my point guard. And then just trying to get some buckets if needed come late in the game, fourth quarter. So I would expect more of that secondary scoring will come around a bit more once Freddie becomes a little bit more of a scoring member in the offense as well.
Which
I was just gonna say it makes sense because like he's in a tough position because like Gabe mentioned, like there's so many guys that can't pop off at any given time. So his job as the point guard is, okay, I got to make sure Gary gets his shot, Scotty gets his looks, OG gets his, Pascal gets his necessary touches. Like very tough position, but I agree. Like I think the team's at its best when Freddie is able to pick his spots and, you know, be a little more aggressive. So I'm sure that'll come as the season goes on.
Yeah, I mean, he first carved out his role as more of the off guard. And so the past 2 years or so that he's really had to be more of that primary ball handler and distributor. I think it's been a bit of an adjustment period. Obviously, last year, Pascal missed the beginning, so he was just coming out and pretty much doing whatever he wanted, being an all-star like he was last year. But now Scotty continues to develop, and Pascal is now here and playing at his best. I think it's really best for the team if Freddie becomes more of a third option just because Scotty's potential is sky high, and Pascal is obviously the one on this team right now. And so I think for them to be the most successful, it will be Freddie being a little bit more passive, spreading it out while Pascal and Scotty kind of run the show per se. But, you know, at that same time, when it comes to situations like this where, you know, Scotty's down for a little bit or somebody's not playing too hot or whatever it may be, I think, yeah, him having that ability to kind of tap into what he did last year and still be that big time scorer would be very valuable going forward.
Definitely, man. I guess we got to address it though. The Utah Jazz are 3-0.
The Utah Jazz are 3-0, just like we all expected. 125 points per game.
Like we all knew that like Jordan Clarkson was going to turn into one of the best starters in the league. Like we just knew it was going to happen, man. Like we just knew it, man. Like Will Hardy's already 3-0 as a head coach. And they've beaten some good teams in the process. The Nuggets, the Timberwolves, and they just beat the Pelicans tonight. In all seriousness, no, like I did not expect this team to be 3-0. I obviously had them as my 15th seed in the Western Conference going into the season. And that looks like a terrible prediction. So I can't believe that they're 3-0 and they're playing at such a high level, especially offensively.
Yeah, them being 3-0 is crazy. Them being 3-0 against any opponents would have been crazy, but like you say, Denver, Minnesota, and New Orleans, like they've played 3 very tough games, 2 of which on the road. If you would have told me that they would have been 2-3 after winning their next 2 games in Houston, yeah, I probably would have expected that to be a little bit more of a realistic expectation. But like you say, Jordan Clarkson has been playing great. Kelly Olynyk has been playing great. Lauri Markkanen looks like a very good early favorite for most improved player. And they've just got a lot of really good veterans right now, despite being a rebuilding team that know how to win games, that know how to close games, and they're just hanging around in games. And unlike some of these other rebuilding teams that are a bit younger and can't close out, Utah can close. And this is a team that has one of the best benches in the league, which is certainly not hurting them either. So they might win a few more games than their front office would ideally like before they start making some trades. They might have to make some trades before the trade deadline at this rate, or they're going to be hurting themselves in the lottery race. But full credit to Utah, man. They've been competing every night. That's 2 OT wins they have now. So they're proving that they can win when it matters. They're good in crunch time, and they might not have the star name, but there's going to be some guys that are making themselves some stars on this year's team.
Yeah, we were all 100% wrong. I think my prediction was like they're gonna give Colin Sexton the ball and just let him go nuts. He ain't even starting for him, so it's like already wrong on that front. But and what they are doing is like I think they're winning at the best time possible. I think it's the best for them to win early, so that way everybody on this roster can get that sky high value. Because obviously, if you win too much, you don't want to get into like 9 seed purgatory or 10 seed purgatory where you're like not bad enough for a top pick, but not good enough to actually compete. So you think with them trading away their 2-star players from being in like 4th seed purgatory, that obviously competing is not the direction for them right now. So getting these wins early, so not only can you see that these players are putting up good stats, but good stats that contribute to winning, I think it's going to make their value about as high as it can get. And the pick equity they get out of these players, or maybe a couple young pieces if they play themselves into it, will be higher than maybe originally even thought. I mean, if Lowry is playing like this, his value is definitely a lot higher than I thought it was. Jordan Clarkson, his value is higher than I thought it was. A lot of players on this team, value just on the up overall. And so obviously unexpected, but I still think works in favor of the direction we thought they were going into.
Yeah, Lowry's playing like it's still FIBA. And Jordan, I swear, Jordan Clarkson, I felt like he did not miss a shot in crunch time tonight. I feel like he made everything. But hypothetically speaking, say they don't make any trades. Do y'all think that this could be a playing team?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I think they can be one spot out. I don't think they're top 10. I think they could be 11th, though.
I mean, the Kings are letting me down, and they were in my play-in. I think I had the Lakers out of the play-in anyways, but they're letting y'all down. And that leaves a 10 seed that leaves an open spot in one of our play-ins. If the Kings and Lakers both don't make it, that's a spot that Utah could take. So, like, yeah, if the Kings and the Lakers both continue to not be so good since we're overreacting to the beginning of the season, I mean, yeah, the Jazz have the pieces to do so. I think they have more depth than the Lakers and probably more depth than the Kings, low key. I mean, I like the way the Kings roster is constructed, but Jazz, they got players, man. They got players. And I like if they go to the play-in, I think they're going to get absolutely destroyed. But could they sneak enough wins against bad teams to do it? Yeah, because at the end of the day, I've always held the mantra that all you have to do to make the playoffs is beat the bad teams. And especially make the play-in, all you have to do is beat the bad teams. If you beat the bottom 10 teams in the league, you're in the play-in.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a scary team, like if they do keep everybody, because they don't have any expectations. And we've mentioned their explosive offense, and they have a lot of guys that can go get it. And that's a very scary team to play against. Like, they're different from the Kings because the Kings have a pretty explosive offense, but at the same time, their expectation is to be in the play-in. The Jazz are expected to be a bottom-tier lottery team. So, scary situation if they do keep everybody. I don't think they will because we know what direction they want to go. But it would be interesting just to see, like, we went ahead, traded Donovan, we went ahead, traded Rudy, and we're still a playing team. Like, that would be kind of fun to see.
Yeah, like you said, they're definitely playing very free right now, which is very fun to see. But, yeah, I mean, they're just playing so many vets. I can't see how they don't move some guys for a team that is rebuilding. I mean, Ochai Agbaji just continues to get DNPs, and they just acquired him as the centerpiece of the Donovan Mitchell trade and was a lottery pick. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is getting DNPs. Leandro Bolmaro is getting DNPs. Taylor Horton-Tucker is hardly playing. Meanwhile, Rudy Gay is still getting heavy minutes. Malik Beasley is getting heavy minutes. And, of course, all of your starters currently are vets. So they might not move on from all of them. Like Lauri Markkanen still has a couple of years on his deal. Maybe he gets kept around at least till the offseason. Someone like Jared Vanderbilt, maybe they keep him around. Guys that don't have their contract expire at the end of the season. But given the amount of young players that could get minutes or could get more minutes that are still on this roster that aren't getting playing time, I'd have to imagine some guys do move, but it's a fun team, man. I don't think they continue this level of play long-term simply because like the defensive talent isn't here. They're allowing a good chunk of points per game. Their offense is just really clicking right now. And that's fun to see, but like is Lauri and Kelly Olynyk and Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton, are all these guys going to continually going to hit all these threes and be that good on offense? It'd be fun if they do, but they're probably going to slow down eventually, and then they're okay to not great defense probably starts to show its weaknesses a little bit more.
Definitely. Very March Madness type of team right now. Like that's how it feels like they're playing. It's fun to see though. And like you said, like they do have a lot of vets, but I think some of the guys, like even though Lauri's not like super young, he's also not super old. Like I think he's probably like 24, 25 right now.
Yeah.
So like, he's still like young enough to keep around. Same thing with Colin Sexton. And then, if they are able to move off of like Rudy Gay and others, like being able to give guys that you brought in as, centerpieces of trades will be very helpful just to let them develop a little bit. But like you said, for right now, it's fun to see them just light teams up and be one of the few undefeated teams left in basketball.
Yeah, there's a certain thing, or I think with teams that are they have solid pieces but no star. It's like if one guy has an off night, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Versus some teams around a similar level that have a star and a bad supporting cast. And so it makes them a little more fun, a little bit more dynamic, and may allow them to sneak a few wins off during this time period while their offense is clicking together. But yeah, I think this team still slows down and falls off. Now, on the other end, the Jazz are the 1 seed. I want to flip it all the way over to the 15 seed. And I got to ask y'all, what is going on in LA, man? What is going on in LA?
They have a terrible roster. They have no wings. LeBron hasn't been, I guess, as amazing as he was last year to start the season. I feel like LeBron started the season off kind of slow last year too.
I mean, he's still been really good. He just hasn't been absolutely insane, but he's still been really good.
It just seems like it's not like that LeBron type of impact, but I don't expect LeBron to have to be that for this Laker team to be great. It's just they're starting 3 guards. Lonnie Walker is starting, which I like Lonnie Walker. He can hit some shots. He shouldn't be getting 30 minutes a game. He shouldn't be taking 20 shots a game. That's just not how it is, but that's just the state that this roster is in. The talent is just not there. It's not. And that's when it's, necessary for LeBron to have to be Superman. AD would have to be one of the best players in the world. AD's been fine so far this season. I'll say that. He looks a lot more engaged, especially defensively. But this team's just not talented enough, man, and it's showing. And I respect Darvin Ham wanting this team to keep defenses honest by taking 3-point shots, but they do not have the shooters to be taking 43s a game. They shouldn't be doing that, man. And Westbrook has just not – he's been very putrid offensively. He made a couple boneheaded decisions tonight, which – not going to say that they lost in the game, but just you can't make decisions like that down the stretch. Like taking a shot 6 seconds into the shot clock when you're up a point. Just can't be doing stuff like that, man. It's a lot going on. There's always a lot going on in LA, but it's not looking good, man. Like so far, it's not looking good. And I don't know if they'll be able to salvage it, man, because the talent is just not there for them to do so.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, they just don't have the talent. I can't necessarily say I expected them to be 0-3, but I can't say I expected them to look any better. I mean, this team, like you say, just doesn't have the talent. The wings aren't there, and there's no shooters. Like they have a lot of guards who can't shoot, and that's just never going to work in today's NBA. Yes. Not to mention the fact when you're playing alongside LeBron, when you're playing alongside AD, and Russ is there as one of your guards, like. They're just a very poorly constructed team. Individually, there's some nice pieces here. But when you have a collective of 4 or 5 guards who are all getting regular rotational minutes, who all can't shoot threes, it just doesn't work. And like you guys said, like LeBron has played decent. AD has looked better. He's looked much more engaged defensively. He actually played really good defensively today against the Trailblazers. But if you can't space the floor in today's NBA and you can't hit threes while you're shooting as many threes as they are, it's just not going to work. I like that AD is playing at the 5. It gives them a little bit more flexibility in terms of spacing, and given the fact that their centers aren't exactly great outside of AD, I think it's a good fit. I think Toscano Anderson has been one of the few bright spots for them off the bench, and given he's one of their very few wings, he kind of has to be. But something has to change, whether it's a Russell Westbrook trade, whether it's a bit of a change in offensive scheme to move away from as many threes and try and use AD a bit more in the paint and attack the rim more. I don't know what the answer is, but something has to change because you can't operate like a typical modern NBA offense shooting this many threes with this offense. It just doesn't work. I will say on a positive note, their defense has been quite good. And specifically today against Portland, it had moments where they looked like one of the best defenses in the league. They had that level of upside, and with the personnel, they could do it. But that needs to be a constant because the offense isn't going to be good enough to get them wins otherwise.
Defenses look very good. Like the other night against the Clippers, they were getting stops down the stretch. Westbrook was even getting stops on Kawhi, but it's like you said, if you can't space the floor consistently, hit shots, like if you're really relying on Patrick Beverley, who's been a solid three-point shooter throughout his career, but he's one of those dudes like I'll live if he's hitting shots. You live with that stuff. You know, Westbrook taking shots, you live with that stuff. It's just like the Rob Pelinka continues to show like he is an incapable GM. And he just cannot build this team right. And you can blame Westbrook all you want. You can blame Frank Vogel last year. It starts with Frank Vogel because he's the one that's signing these guys, that's making these trades, that's putting this roster together, that's incapable of sticking with the modern NBA. And that's why they're on 3 right now. You can hope for AD and LeBron to try and carry this team, but that's just not a good look, man. Something definitely has to change for them to have any shot of even being a playing team this year.
Yeah, my 11 seed prediction is looking pretty good so far. I would say that. You guys thought that was kind of a hot, wild take to have them outside of the play-in, but saw that writing on the wall. LeBron literally already 2 30-point games, 31, 8 and 8, 31, 8 and 15, both losses. Stat line was cool in the Clippers game, low-scoring game, but he can't carry the team anymore. Even like AD's even been like decent, better than last year for sure, but not the same, like not bubble AD. Somewhere in between, and it's just that's not enough. The team need some structural changes beyond the stars. It's like it's one thing to have a couple big names, but like it doesn't fly with like having that, say, like 2011 Heat construction where the supporting cast isn't necessarily there yet, but you put your stars together and it's just so much that it overwhelms everybody. And that team didn't win a championship, but they still won the East and won the final, or went to the finals rather. That doesn't fly anymore. Just a couple like big name players and that supporting cast is not gonna take you there.
It's just. And then the fact you look at their wings are JTA and Troy Brown. Those are 2 dudes that could not get on the floor on the last teams that they played for. Like, it's just like, man, yeah, Pelinka just has done a bad job. And like LeBron has put up good numbers. LeBron's always going to get his numbers for sure. But the roster has to be at least somewhat, like capable of doing something around him. And this team's just not that right now. And I don't know. I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon.
Nah, it's definitely been a rough start. The silver lining is they've played against 2 of their games have been arguably against the 2 best teams in the conference in Golden State and the Clippers. They've lost to the Clippers by 6 and the Trailblazers by 2, given they made some very poor decisions to end that game, but they have been competitive. The bad news is their next 4 games are against Denver, Minnesota, Denver, and New Orleans. So this very well could be an 0-7 team.
And the Jazz. Don't forget the Jazz.
They then play the Jazz, Cleveland, the Jazz, and the Clippers. Once they get around to the easier part of the schedule, they might start to turn it around a bit. They have a stretch that goes Sacramento, Brooklyn, Detroit, San Antonio, Phoenix, San Antonio, Pacers. They're going to have to get to that point, and they're going to have to get some confidence back by then. If they can't get it back at that point in time, even though that's only late November, it already might be wraps for them. So
I'm gonna say this right now. You can clip this if you want to. If they're 1-6 or 0-7 after this stretch, they're gonna go into that easy part of the schedule and they'll probably lose half of those games that you just brought up. Just kind of how they did last year, losing to OKC, the Spurs and stuff like that. They'll probably find a way to do that again, and then it's gonna be full-blown panic mode in LA. Because when it rains in LA, it pours like really bad. So we'll see. We will see.
I'm not gonna lie too. I think it's a little rough that in this early part of the season is where you have that stretch of Pistons, Spurs, and Suns, but then Spurs twice in a row, and then Pacers. Like that's 5 out of 6 games against like the bottom of bottom feeders. I mean, Detroit, obviously, I had them kind of going for a little bit of a play-in push, but especially Spurs 3 times and the Pacers 4 out of 5 games. Like that's the bottom of the bottom. So if you lose like 2 out of 5 of those games,
Then
like
you're the
that's bad. And
droppers.
yeah, then it's like you almost wish that these easy games would come later so that this team's a little bit more together. Maybe chemistry's up. Maybe they get on a roll. So having these easy games early is not optimal, I don't think, for their chances.
Yeah, I think one thing that is good though that Devin mentioned, defensively they've looked pretty good. So the hope is maybe the offense can just pick up a little bit because even like their bubble team that won the championship, they weren't amazing offensively. It's just LeBron and AD were that good, and they only needed KCP and Danny Green to hit a couple shots. That's really all it was. And their team, like the next year before all the injuries, was kind of the same thing. They were elite defensively all the way through the season, and offensively they asked for those same things. So maybe they can get to that point, but it has to happen soon because you're already 0-3, and you don't want to fall too far behind the 8 ball because this Western Conference is very deep, and there are teams right now that aren't playing at their best that they're going to hit their stride soon enough.
Hey, man. All right. Lakers talk is cool. Let me talk about a team that's playing right now. Phoenix. First game, people are looking to get on that Phoenix pack already, The way they went out last season, all the off-court drama with them. And then coming into this year, I know we were all a little bit low on them. And throughout the first half of that first game, it was looking like that was for good reason. They were not looking too hot. Come back in that first game, looking pretty good. Devin Booker especially has been showing out. Even in their loss, he looked pretty good. Even right now, obviously the game is not close to over, but giving it to the Clippers, who even if they just play a really good half against the Clippers, if this game ends like super close and even they lose or whatever happens, I think Phoenix is playing pretty well right now. What do you guys make of them, and especially Devin Booker playing as well as he has?
Yeah, Devin Booker's been very good. Full credit to him. He's definitely been their best player so far to start the year. I've liked what I've seen from their starting lineup for the most part. Chris Paul has still been fine. Again, he's not as good as he was when he first joined Phoenix, but he still looks good. He's still playing fairly good defense, still creating a lot. DeAndre Ayton has produced well. I'd still have seen a lot of moments where he is just not anywhere near as aggressive enough as he should. Forget what game it was over the course of the week, but sometime in the fourth quarter, he just had multiple possessions where he's got a guard on his back. He's like, oh, let me just kick it out. That just can't be happening if you're DeAndre Ayton. Now, he's still played well and he's put up good numbers, but he has had the opportunity to do a lot more. The thing that concerns me the most for Phoenix is their bench. They've had some moments. Damian Lee has obviously had some moments. He closed out the game the other night. Torrey Craig, I like, but as your primary wing off of the bench is concerning. I definitely have questions about their bench. Cam Payne has moments, but all in all, since he had his really good run in the playoffs over a year ago now, he hasn't been anything great either. That's the most worrisome thing to me about this Phoenix team. I think their starting lineup's going to be fine. I think Cam Johnson has looked fine in that adjustment so far. And like you mentioned, Devin Booker's been great. He's going to have to be great for them to be good, but that seems to be something that I feel comfortable relying on. But it's the bench that's definitely a worry for me so far, at least.
Well said. Yeah, Book's been amazing. I think their lineup, their starting five is even better with Cam Johnson because Jay Crowder, like he's somebody that knocks down shots, but Cam Johnson's a shooter, and that will provide the ample spacing that they really need. And DA does have to be more aggressive because he just goes through those lapses, like you said, where have a guard on him or just a matchup where he can get the bucket, chooses not to. Like you want to see him get to the free throw line more, just like how he missed those free throws the other night. It's probably because you only get to the line like 1 or 2 times a game, so you're just not even comfortable there. But yeah, their bench, it's kind of future, man. Like when I was seeing Jock Landale get minutes, I'm like, man, this is just I don't like it at all. I don't like it. campaign's been kind of mid since they made that finals run. I was saying last year, like, they really did need to make a trade to get another scorer off their bench. This year, I think they need that more than ever because their depth is just not there right now. And for them to be, competitive like we know they want to be, they're going to have to make that happen. Or maybe Jay Crowder will just come back or something. I don't know. But moves definitely will have to be made in Phoenix. Chris Paul kind of looks old. He does look old right now, but it is early in the season. Maybe he just needs to ramp it up a little bit. Still getting his assist numbers, stat padding a little bit. But, he's going to have to be more dynamic, as the season goes on, just so like they can get the proper seeding that they probably will need in the playoffs.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, or at least I would hope they're a team that ends up becoming interested in Jordan Clarkson because he'd be that type of guy that can create a bit for you, can score off the bench. They need that guy who can give them some production off the bench that can run that second unit.
Yeah, I think they'll definitely be in the market for one of those Utah players. It's just, what will Utah want in return from Phoenix? I'm sure they could probably just throw some picks in, but if say the Jazz are looking for more of a young piece, I don't know if getting Jay Crowder and a pick is necessarily the optimal pick for what they want to do unless they traded for Jay Crowder and went to a buyout situation or something like that, which is definitely very possible.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have to see how that develops. I think, of course, especially with the prevalence of 3-team trades and things like that in the situation, there's definitely a way for Phoenix to acquire a lot of those guys without having to do too much. I think another thing, when we were making our preseason list, I think I put Devin Booker as number 2 in my shooting guards list. When I was doing that, I'm like, okay, I know Devin Booker is really good, but is he really the second best at his position in the whole league? And
Yeah.
I don't know. And for some reason, in my head, he was a star, but I didn't know if he was even approaching superstar status like that. But the way he's playing so far this year, I think by the end of the season, he could for real be a superstar player. Maybe not top 1, MVP level player, but the tier right below that.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question. I mean, he was all NBA first team last year. People kind of overlooked that because of how their year ended, and he wasn't in MVP talks, but people wanted to make a case for him because they were so good. Book was an all NBA player. They wanted to make that case for him. Book is that guy for sure. And I'm glad to see him looking like he's taking another step forward because they will need him to do that the way this team is set up right now. He kind of has to be all world for them.
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say, this season with all the inner turmoil with, obviously one of their starters deciding to sit out after he was then not going to be a starter, to the whole thing with DeAndre Ayton and his relationship with Coach Monty and everything there, to Sarver, to Chris Paul obviously looking very much so declined. All of that. If Devin Booker was to lead this team, say to a 4 or 5 seed, I think he might get some MVP looks because the narrative that things keep falling apart around him, and throughout that, he is sort of the foundation that's taking this team to sustain success. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And obviously his numbers so far would back up any sort of narrative to go with that.
Definitely possible. Definitely possible. He's going to have to be if they're going to be good. So hopefully it continues. Good start for him, no doubt. Let's talk about another good start in the West. Another team that I, at least personally, didn't expect to be 3-0. Portland have been off to a good start. Dame, after a rough first game, looks as good as Dame ever has. A brilliant game against the Lakers today, closing out in a very good win against the Lakers where Dame looked like he just had more experience than everyone on the Lakers team as far as closing games, and that's what Dame does. So I'll start with your thoughts, Gabe. How do you feel about how Portland have started the season?
Dame is back, man. We were doing our preseason ranking, and it's the same thing with him. We were oh, he missed a whole season. I know, we don't want to factor in the injury too much, but, we don't really know. Yeah, like you said, first game, maybe a little bit of, I haven't really played in almost a full season. And like obviously like there's preseason and stuff, but this is the real deal. Back to back 40 pieces in 2 of the first 3 games of the season. He's back. He's back in a big way. Like I think this team is even probably built a little bit better around him than like when he left last season. I think they've made a little bit of I think Jeremy Grant next to him is good. I think Josh Hart, this man is crazy on boards. Like I know he's been crazy on boards for a while, but this man should not be like running forward getting 16 rebounds. Like who does? Are you Dennis Rodman? Like what is happening right now? And it's just like I like a lot of pieces on this team. Anthony Simons has had a couple of like poor shooting performances, but overall I'm still higher on him than most. They're playing like them having a little bit of Justice Winslow. I saw somebody tweet out Justice Winslow went from like point guard of the future to small ball 5, and I thought that was hilarious. But
I think I tweeted that, Gabe.
Was that you? Was that you? Okay. I know I saw it. Yeah, good tweet. That made me chuckle. But yeah, him having a roll off their bench. I think Shaedon Sharp's had a couple of exciting flashes. Not that their bench is great or anything, but there's a little here and there of like, hey, that guy could be kind of cool. And so it's fun watching them play. It's fun watching Dame be back. Obviously, I had them as a 9 seed, so I do expect this to subside a little bit, But overall, I mean, good start for them. Like, you haven't played the best of the best competition. Obviously, we projected the Suns as like a 6-7 seed. You guys had the Kings out of the play-in. I had the Lakers out of the play-in. So, or maybe you guys had the Trailblazers. Either way, 2 like play-in.
Devin had them out. I had them in. And I think you might have had them higher than I did. I think I might have had them at 10.
Okay. Yeah, so. But regardless, not the strongest schedule in the world, but at the same time, you're taking care of business. And what did I just say? All you have to do to make the playoffs is beat the bad teams. And so do I think they're going to do that, especially if Dame is going to – not saying he has to drop 40 every night, but if he's going to continue to play at the high level like we're used to seeing him play 2-3 years ago, I think, yeah, they're definitely going to do that. Now, how far do they go? I'm not really sure. Maybe this team shocks us all because so many teams are new in the West that, like, we don't really know. Their ceiling doesn't seem as high, especially I know Devin has the whole lack of defensive center concern, which is very valid, especially seeing, like, Nurkic on some of those plays against the Lakers is like, man, what are you doing? Luckily, the Lakers can't shoot a 3 to save their life, so it didn't hurt them as
what
much
he was
as
doing.
it should have. Yeah, but, like – I think the Trailblazers are a team of peaks and valleys, and I think so far the peaks are showing out.
Yeah, like so far defensively they haven't been bad. They've been okay. Even though, Nurkic is what he is. But other than that, they've been fine. And Dame is reminding people of how good he actually is. Like people were talking very crazy towards the end of the offseason. Like Dame is not that guy, but Dame is very much that guy. And I love seeing it. Jeremy Grant's look fine. My biggest takeaway is Justice Winslow. Like in the game against the Kings, he was D'ing up Sabonis, and Sabonis could not move him. He could not score on Justice Winslow, which was just so crazy to see. And Josh Hart was making big plays in that game. Like I love watching the Trailblazers, man. I think Anthony Simons going to pick it up. I'm also pretty high on him, like Gabe is. So I like to see him, man. I definitely don't expect this to keep up. Like I'm sure they'll definitely be more of the team that we expect them to be, but it's good to see so far, man. It's just great to see Damian Lillard back on the basketball court, man, because he does amazing stuff like he did today against the Lakers, like just dominate down the stretch in close games. And, I really miss watching that.
Yeah, like you guys say, Dame is back, and it's great to see. And it probably is the best team he's had around him, at least in quite a few years. You guys talked about the good wings, like Nazir Little has been playing good defense. Jeremy Grant has been playing good defense and some valuable complementary scoring. Very good layup against LeBron and AD down the stretch today. We talk about Shaedon Sharp, who hasn't even been bad himself defensively, which has been a nice surprise to see. I've been really impressed by what I've seen from him, even though his statistical numbers haven't jumped off the board. He's been competing. He's been getting some turnovers on defense. Let's not forget also that Gary Payton hasn't played a game yet for this team. So they got some nice guys in the perimeter that are D'ing up quite well. Like you alluded to, Tyrik, Justice Winslow has been playing very well. Matt Sabonis disappointed me in that game too, but Winslow also just played good defense. So
Yes.
full credit to him. Nurkic is the biggest problem, and I think he by himself makes me to value this defense more than I probably should at times, because watching that game today, I was yelling at Nurkic more than I probably should have been, because some of the decisions he was making was blowing my mind. But nonetheless, he's actually been fine offensively, and Drew Eubanks has actually looked like a positive backup center this year, which any Spurs fan would have thought would have been completely impossible last year. So they seem to have built together a pretty darn good roster here. How far that goes, that remains to be seen. But they've got some nice pieces here. They've got a lot of guys around Dame and Anthony Simons and Nurkic that can defend. They've got themselves a good 10-man rotation, and they should be right in the thick of the things with the playoff picture. And like you guys said, Dame is fully reminding everyone how good he is and that he's still one of the best guards in the league.
Yeah. I think the Nurkic thing might be more of an issue if they make the playoffs. Like, then we'll really see that get exposed. But as far as regular season goes, like, they might be able to, get away with it, man. I think Chauncey Billups, we didn't really get to see, like, his coaching style last year because Dame only played, like, 20-ish games. They made all of those big trades. But now we're going to see it, man. And, I would expect a Chauncey Billups-led team to at least be, gritty defensively. And they have the wing defenders, like we mentioned, to do so. It's just a matter of, finding ways to mitigate, Nurkic's defensive lapses and, their backcourt being a little suspect defensively. And I think they got the personnel to make that work throughout the regular season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even just today, specifically to the game against the Lakers, I mean, we saw quite a bit of zone, which against the team that can't shoot, I like the call. They made the Lakers shoot, and that paid out well. There was a lot of shadowing on and off of guys, with Nurkic being put off ball on Westbrook at times so that he can help more in the paint, so he doesn't have to guard man on man, with then Nurkic being stuck in guy in the perimeter and shadowing so that you might leave open threes, but the Lakers aren't hitting them, but helping out Nurkic in some of those possessions. There was just a lot of smart defensive play callings from Portland's coaching staff, so that's an encouraging sign to see alongside their good wing defenders. So they look like a team that could actually be a positive defensive team, which is not something that's been typical in any Dame era-led team in Portland. So they definitely have a chance to be a little bit better than I had expected this season.
I think, Dame with a good defensive core is I think that's a recipe for success. Obviously, we saw them literally, the conference probably wasn't as strong as it is now, but they went to a conference final with Dame, CJ, and a bad defensive cast. So it's like Dame.
I know it was a good defensive thing.
Yeah.
Solid, but
they had the wings. They had the wings for that, man.
They were a top 15 defense. They were middle of the pack.
Middle of the pack, but say this defense is good.
They won't be. I'm telling you right now, they won't be. There's too many good. It's not even a shot to Portland. There's just too many good defenses in the league this year. Portland on paper are not a top 10 defense.
Shock the world, man.
They could be top 15. They could be around 15. Yeah, I don't think they're any better than that, though.
But Dame with a solid defensive cast, man. That's a recipe for success across the board. I think if Anthony Simon can be close to what CJ McCollum was in his time there on offense, I think their offense will continue to look steady. I think if Dame plays at an all-star starter level damn near, if he's playing like this, he might take that spot. I'm just saying. But transitioning off of that into another possible starting all-star guards roster, I want to ask you guys, man, how long until Christian Wood gets into this starting lineup?
I kind of hope he stays off the bench, honestly.
You think so?
I do. I like what he brings off the bench. Just keeps them a little more versatile, and I just having him in that starting lineup defensively when you already got Luka in there. I just like having as many good defenders around Luka as possible, and you got JaVale McGee in there as the big. I think they'll be fine, keeping him off the bench, because there's nothing wrong with having somebody that can get 20 every single night coming off your bench.
Yeah, I'm not completely opposed to it either. Like you say, Wood is playing the valuable minutes. McGee's not out there playing 25 minutes a night, right? He's averaging under 15 minutes a game this season. He's in there to start the quarter, or start the first half, and he's in there to start the second half, and that's pretty much it. And I'm more than fine with that. Then you can go to Wood. If Wood needs a bit of a break, you can go to some Maxi Kleber, some Dwight Powell minutes, depending on the matchup. And then Wood can come back in to close your half or close your game. And I think that's a good big man rotation for them. Like you say, having more defenders around Luka Doncic is never going to be a bad thing. You get a little bit more of a better rebounder, a little bit more paint presence. It's a good role for McGee where he's not going to be playing a ton of minutes. He's not going to get in a ton of foul trouble, which he can get into if he's playing too many minutes. So long term, do I think there's a point where Wood eventually starts? Probably. But I think what they have going right now is more than fine. Wood's getting the starter minutes. He's getting all of his touches with Luka, and that duo looks as good as anyone could have expected, which, given their skill sets, isn't really much of a surprise.
It just makes me think, like, if JaVale McGee's getting like 14 minutes a game and Christian Wood's getting like 25, I know you want to like stagger, but if you're playing a significant portion of Wood and Luka minutes together anyways, I just feel like for the status thing at a certain point, it's like, okay, he's earned this. He deserves it. He can still play a lot of minutes with the bench unit, but just for like that status thing, I don't know. I mean, maybe they talked it out and he doesn't really care, which would seem contrary to the preseason sort of debacle, but maybe he doesn't care about the status. But I think it'd be good to see just for him and his progression as a player to be like, okay, I came in here, put my head down, worked hard, showed out, and I got rewarded for it.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I think from that point of view, it makes sense for him to be starting. But there's definitely situations where for team success and for how productive a bench unit can be, there definitely is an argument for X player who's better offensively and better at creating is better off coming off of our bench. And that doesn't mean he has to always play with the bench unit, just like in the case of Christian Wood, but having that guy who can be your primary initiator off of the bench is valuable. And that was my initial thoughts. I think I've mentioned before when Detroit acquired Bogdanovich was, do you want Killian Hayes and Corey Joseph to be initiating your offense, or do you want Bogdanovich for a bit more of a scoring punch and a bit more pace and spacing and a bit more creation off your bench? Now, Bojan's looked great in Detroit, and he's looked very good in that starting lineup, but there's sometimes, depending on the personnel on a team and what you do or don't have from a creation standpoint off your bench, it can be valuable to have a better player come off of your bench and then end up closing games anyways. There's not a ton of teams that have that situation, but I think Dallas is definitely one of those teams, and Wood fits into that role quite well.
Yeah, like we all know, like guys like Tyler Hero could easily, before the season start everywhere, Jordan Poole. But it's valuable to have guys that can come off your bench and there's not that much of a drop off, and that's what Christian Wood is providing for them. And that's something that Dallas hasn't really had like consistently. Like Spencer Dinwiddie was kind of on and off last year for them. So it's good to just have somebody off your bench that, okay, we can run our offense through them. We can let Lucas sit a little bit, not have to be on the floor, all the time. And it's just good. It's good to have. And, like we mentioned, he's getting the starter minutes. He's going to be on the court when it matters the most. And as a player, as that status, as Gabe mentioned, that should what matters the most is like, I'm going to be on the court when it's winning time. And that's where the money is actually made.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. As me personally, as a player, I cared much more about being out in the fourth than I did about a start or not. But and Dallas have got a few more bench things to figure out too, which is only going to help Wood's production once that gets figured out. I mean, Hardaway Jr. and Dinwiddie have been flip-flopping in and out of the starting lineup. I believe Tim Hardaway started the first two, and then Dinwiddie started the third. So once that rotation gets figured out a bit more, once Wood has his true running mate as his guard with the second unit outside of just his minutes with Luka, that's only going to improve. He's not just having to do everything by himself in that second unit. So that Dallas second unit has become a really strong second unit now once they figure out that guard rotation between Dinwiddie and Tim Hardaway.
For clarity, I just looked, and Dinwiddie started both of their games. They've only played 2 so far.
Oh, okay.
But if they do continue to roll with like Tim Hardaway as that top backup guard, and then Christian Wood is that top backup front court player, I think that's a really more than solid foundation to build your bench unit off of. And clearly it's working, man. Obviously dropped the first game, but we're up big through stretches. If they won your second game by 40, which if you go into the locker room after that game, you pretty much just got to say good job on to the next. I mean, no game is ever perfect, but winning by 40 is about as close as you can get to doing so. So I think they're in a pretty good place right now. 1-1, but your point differential is like plus 38 or something. Like, they look good, man.
Yeah, it took a Damian Lee fourth quarter explosion for them to lose that first game. Yeah, they look good. I like Dallas' squad. I like their team more than last year, even though they did lose Brunson. But it's just like we say this every episode. The West is so damn deep. There's so many good teams. It's just like they may have got better, but so did the rest of the conference.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, man, the West is super deep, but we need to talk about the trenches of the East, bro. Devin, it is time for Orlando Magic talk, and
It is time.
I'm gonna have to come to you. Takeaways.
Orlando's look great. They are much better than an 0-3 team. This is the true example of a young team that just can't close out games, which is fine because they're the third youngest team in the league. They're not going to close out games very well. They're leaning on guys that are a rookie, and Paolo are a second-year guy, and Franz Wagner that is a second-year guard, and Jalen Suggs, who looked good for a game or two before he got injured, unfortunately. Hopefully he's back soon because he actually looked really good to start the season. He was very aggressive on his drives, finishing well at the rim. You're then relying on your only vet being Terrence Ross, who, again, has actually looked really good to start the year after a pretty down year for him last year. He's going to be a very valuable vet for the Magic throughout the season while he is there, if he does then indeed getting traded before the deadline. But this team just has a ton of bright spots. Paolo has looked every bit worthy of being the number one overall pick. Defensively, definitely a lot of improvements to be made, but he's a rookie. That's fine. This is a guy who is getting 20 a night in his first 3 games as a rookie. And some of those nights are on poor shooting performances, but he already knows how to get to the free throw line very well in his first 3 games as a professional, which is arguably the most impressive thing I've seen from him. He's shown that he can step out and shoot some threes. He's shown the ability to pull up from mid-range, but his ability to attack and finish at the rim has probably been his most impressive, along with drawing those fouls. Franz has looked very comfortable, and some of their other guys have looked fine as well. Like RJ Hampton was one of the guys that was joked about the most on NBA Twitter during the summer league. He's looked fine out there as a backup guard right now. His handle and his passing looks a lot better because they forced him into those uncomfortable situations over the summer. Chumo KK has looked better as well. He's been hitting some threes. So there's a lot to like about this Orlando team right now. They're still going to need some time. They're going to have to go through some struggle in some fourth quarters to lose some games like they have against the Hawks, like they have against the Celtics, like they have against the Pistons, but they've been in every game. They've looked competitive, and that's all you can ask from this team. Honestly, if they can be competitive and still lose, that's honestly a win-win for them at this point.
I was just gonna say that. Like, I would rather them be 0-3, but looking very competitive and having opportunities to win those games, and maybe like not looking as bright, but being able to win some nasty games. Like what you said, like they look very good, much better than an 0-3 team. And it's just good to see like the young talent is shining and they're showing not only flashes, but they're putting it together pretty consistently. And they don't even have their full roster, which is kind of scary. Like Markel's out. Jalen Suggs, obviously got hurt. I was gonna say like he's looked very good as well. And I even like Coach Mosley is not afraid to give guys like Bol has not been consistently playing minutes in his NBA career, but he's been giving them some opportunities and he's looked okay out there. Like I like seeing that these young guys are getting opportunities and Mosley's trying different things, being innovative. And Paolo's looked great, for the first overall pick. He's looked really good. Exciting team, man. For an 0-3 team, that's a team that you should be watching every single night. I'll say that much.
100%. I will be tuning into every Orlando game, which I am very biased, but they have been a very fun team to watch at the beginning of the year.
For sure.
Hey, yeah, this team, I think the best thing beyond just the looking good and losing is I think Orlando is one of those teams that they had a lot of pieces, kind of sort of like what the Jazz are right now. And they had a lot of pieces, but it was like, who is going to be that guy, that franchise piece, reliable guy to take them to the next level? And this team, they found it. And that's I think the hardest step is they found their guy. Paolo has proven very quickly he is a him. He is a future number one. Is that an overreaction? I don't even think so because he's given me no reason throughout college, throughout preseason, throughout anything to say otherwise. And then beyond that, you got Franz, Ross, as long as he's still there, Wendell, who I didn't expect Wendell to even get above like the mid-teens in points really, but I think he's doing exactly what they need him to do. Being a solid player, putting up some all-around stats. I think whoever emerges as the guard, you've seen solid games from Jalen Suggs. You've seen solid games from Cole Anthony. At that point, it's just a matter of consistency. It's like there is so much good here. And with that, if they're losing, who's to say they don't get another top prospect next year? And then things are really rolling. If the next year they like, this team is good. Paolo comes into year 2 and maybe he's like on another level as we've seen. I think a lot of sophomore players do in the recent years. And for a rookie that looks this good, I mean, that could come quick. We saw how good the rookie class was last year, especially towards the end of the season with Scotty, Cade, Evan, and all those guys. So it's like this team is going to be nice. And I already expected them to kind of finish, I think, a little bit better than they started as long as the players are playing. If they shut some guys down, I think that changes. But this team just across the board, man, so much fun. Great league pass team and great rebuild to watch. A little bit behind the Pistons, I think, in terms of how successful they can be right now. But I think that Magic Pistons rivalry, that game they just had against each other was super close. And I think that can be a little rivalry going forward. That could be a lot of fun.
Definitely. Those are definitely two of the most fun teams in the Eastern Conference right now, despite not being two of the best. But like you say, Orlando are probably going to get another great pick this year. This year's draft class, even if they don't get one of the top 2 guys, it's still loaded. They're probably going to get a pretty darn good player out of it. So they're going to have a great core going into next year. Next year might finally be the year they can make that jump. But definitely one of the most fun teams to keep an eye on and to watch throughout the rest of the season. I mean, yeah, Paolo by himself is just he's so good, man. He is so good coming in his first 3 games as a rookie. But let's talk about another team with a really good rookie because there's been some impressive rookies to start this season. We're gonna go to Detroit.
Oh no!
We'll talk about another really impressive rookie later, but we're gonna go to Detroit first. We'll stay in the rivalry, and we'll give a quick Jaden Ivey discussion. We'll get there, Gabe. We'll get there.
He definitely thought it was
I'm about to pop. I was about to pop off. I was about to pop off. But no, Detroit looks super cool too, though. I mean, I think, like you said earlier about Bojan coming in and being good in that starting lineup, I think Jaden Ivey's coming in. He's fit well next to Cade. I think they both look like really solid playmakers. I think Jaden Ivey's come in and done some solid scoring. I think across the board, he's done a lot of what he's expected to, and really, that's all you can expect from him. It's like he's really good, really quick, and I think he's adjusted to the game really quickly, and it definitely helps having another star guard alongside you. But the fact that their dynamic is already working to an extent is really nice. I think the weakness of this team is kind of what you guys said in the preseason predictions video, and something that I think I didn't account for maybe as much by predicting them a little bit higher was their bench does not look good really at all, I don't think. And so that has allowed teams to sort of take advantage of that and get some wins on them. Obviously, this team has a losing record right now for our early season overreactions. But just in a general sense, man, Detroit, I think the same way as Orlando, they've looked good while still dropping games. And so maybe if the things they show this season convinces some veteran pieces to maybe sign as bench players in the offseason, maybe with some good picks, they acquire some new young guys, and that sort of adds alongside the core. Or maybe their pick is a little bit later, and they just draft a guy in the mid-teens that's going to come in and be a role player. But whatever that may be, I think this team, this season, their goal should be look as good as possible, but don't put too much stock in the losses, because I think if they show those flashes, they'll convince a lot of people to want to be there next season.
Yeah, I think they'll look a little better when those Corey Joseph minutes or Alec Burke minutes, because Corey Joseph probably shouldn't be playing NBA basketball right now. He might be on that list, but yeah, they've looked fine. Jaden Ivey's been pretty impressive, I think. We mentioned how the learning curve for point guards is kind of different, or just young guards in general, and he's looked very good. Like he looks like he might be above that curve, which is good to see. I'm probably a little more critical of them because I have pretty decent expectations for this team and their future and stuff. I think they're just going to fall victim to kind of like how Orlando is, just a young team that will struggle to close games. I think they'll be in a lot of games, but they might struggle to close many of those games out. We kind of saw that in their opener. Like I felt like Cade was trying to give the Magic that win because he was just taking quick shots down the stretch, kind of like how Westbrook was doing today. It was just like, okay, Cade, like slow down a little bit, man. Like you don't have to rush. You're playing with the lead and everything. But yeah, so far they look fine. Isaiah Stewart's looked pretty solid from what I've seen, in live action. And I just like the direction that this team is going, man. But definitely would like to see them be able to beat the Pacers, who are obviously tanking already. So yeah, kind of a bad loss, but I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, this team has a lot of upside still, and like you say, once Alex Burks comes in, that'll help their depth as well. All due respect to Corey Joseph, though, he has actually started the year quite well. That's probably not going to continue because he's probably not going to continue to shoot 80% from three, but he has played well to start the year. But at the end of the day, the starting lineup has looked very good. Like you guys mentioned, Ivy's looked great to start. And surprisingly, to me at least, it's been more than just he's athletic, he's quick, he can get to the rim. Like his ability to kick out of those drives, his ability to distribute when he gets to the rim has been better than I would have expected off the rip. His defense has actually been pretty good at times as well, which obviously, again, he has the athleticism, but that doesn't always translate right away. So his overall game has looked comfortable right away. As you mentioned, Tyrik, Isaiah Stewart has looked really good to start the year for me. He's looked way better than he has throughout his first couple of years in the NBA. He's looked active. He's improved his three-point shooting a little bit, not to the point where he's a great three-point shooter yet, and he probably isn't going to be shooting it that consistently, but that continues to improve. So I like the development he's making. Jalen Duren, man, I love myself a defensive center. We know I love a defensive center, but Jalen Duren he's looked great out of the gate. Very active, very mobile, great length. He's been an absolute beast on the boards. He's been able to finish around the rim. He's had a bit of a hook shot. He has a bit of a push shot already. He just looks like someone who in a year or two's time is going to be able to fill in and give this Detroit team 25 or 30 minutes a night and just be a really quality center on both ends of the floor. He's a fun player to watch. He is a fun center. He's a slightly longer and slightly more bouncy version of Okongwu. He is fun to watch. How Detroit got him this late in the first round, I do not know, but full credit to them on acquiring him. He's looked very good through his first few games as well.
People thought that defensive center mold was like a dying breed a couple years ago, but they've managed to not only come back as far as effectiveness goes, but also the fact that you can look at a player like that and say he's fun. It's just good to see for the sport, I think, because people, I think the classic thing was always, the guard with the flashy handles, he is cool, and the defensive center guy, he's kind of boring. And yeah, he's good, but I don't really care. But the fact that, and maybe it's because, you're a little bit deeper into it when you're looking at things, but it's nice to hear stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely a bit of a defensive guy, so that's definitely not a general take, given I was a defensive guy in my playing days as well. So without it, I wouldn't have had much going for me. But yeah, the Pistons have looked like they've smashed another draft. Ivy and Duren have looked great. It's good to see, man. It looks like they got some good upside moving forward. But I'll let you take it away, Gabe. Let's talk about the other great rookie so far to begin the season.
Hey man, I straight came out of the draft and I'm like, hey, the Pacers got a super athletic dude that I think can look really cool next to Tyrese, and he's came off the bench so far, and it don't even matter. He is still giving them buckets. Benedict Mathurin, Benji himself. This guy, I expected him to be athletic. I expected him to be really good, but I thought that he would have some of those adjustment growing pains. And obviously, could be a little bit of beginner's luck. He's going to come back down to earth. Ben Mathurin is not going to average, I don't think, over 20 points per game as a rookie. But dang, these flashes this quickly is super promising to see. Now, I know he's doing it as part of the bench unit. So, yes, you're not out there against the starters getting half of these numbers. But numbers are still numbers. And numbers at the NBA level especially are still impressive numbers. To drop 27 in your second, third game of your career, like this is not everyday stuff. And I know they had Chris Duarte come out last year and he started really well for them and he kind of came back down to earth. But I think Ben Mathurin is a little bit of a higher ceiling player than him, obviously 6th overall pick for a reason, and somebody that could become a building block next to Reese really quickly. And I mean, them keeping him off the bench or starting him, I think this team will still find a way to lose a lot of games. And so I don't think they're done at all stockpiling talent. I think with the Pacers team, I mean, you've seen even Jalen Smith, who we were like, what is his role in the NBA? He's came in and he's been a solid contributor for them. I think that's really great to see. And so it's like, this team is not going to be good, but this team is showing already that they have some solid roster spots taken up. Like, there's some really solid players that could be here for a while.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Chris Duarte thing because he started off kind of hot last year too. But like you said, I like what they have. Like, they're just stockpiling young talent now, and they have a direction. They know what they want to do. I saw Devin made a tweet though the other day talking about, it might hurt the Tyrese Halliburton MIP campaign, man, because guys are missing shots on Tyrese passes. Like, he's creating a lot, but guys just aren't knocking things down. And we got to expect at some point they're probably going to be like, okay, Tyrese, go ahead, sit down a little more. Let's play you like maybe 25 minutes a night instead of 35 or something like that. So that's a little concerning, but I do like what I've seen from Ben Mathurin and just, this team in general, that they're being pretty competitive in the games that they played. They had a chance to beat the Spurs the other night. They won against the Pistons. Like, they're being pretty competitive, which is always good to see from a young team.
Man, his season low in assists is like 7. I don't think he's in too much danger of his assist totals being too low to give him an award. I mean, the fact that he totaled 7 one game, 10 one game, and 12 one game.
They could be so much higher, though, man. This could be so much higher. Like, he should have had 15 to 17 against the Pistons the other night comfortably. Like, it was outrageous between layups and open threes that were being missed. Like, man, like, and they still played well. Like, they put up 124 points, but like, they probably should have put up 140. It was crazy, especially in the second half.
I think he's found a little bit of a running mate already, though. I think it's cool that, like, you've seen, obviously, Tyrik can get his buckets, but then he's obviously this huge playmaker. Ben Mathurin, he's been pretty impressive on the boards, man. His rebounding totals for a guard, obviously I keep referring to his athleticism, but dude's a good rebounder. I think to have that as your secondary guard that kind of does something a little bit different than what your primary guy does, I think that's really good to see. And I think they can be some solid running mates going forward.
Yeah, they complement each other very well, which is what you can ask from, your backcourt of the future, because that's the direction that they obviously want to go.
Yeah, definitely. They've got that backcourt figured out well, like you guys have alluded to. Jalen Smith has looked quite solid to start the year. And for a guy that came off a major injury, Isaiah Jackson's looked like really good to start the year as well. He's had a good jump in his step. He's played with really good energy, really good rebounding. It's finished well around the rim. And Goga Bitadze has played by far the best basketball of his career as well. This is a solid backup center as a guy who's not always been the most natural athlete, not been the most comfortable guy on the floor. He looks really good this year as like a quality backup center, and that wasn't so certain to end last season. So they've got some nice pieces here that they can build around. But Halliburton and Mathurin are definitely the core too, and they've both been absolutely brilliant to start the year.
Hey, man. Okay, so another team has been pretty good, but also at the same time have not really played anybody of note. What are your guys' thoughts on Atlanta so far? Because I think we've seen a lot of good stuff out of DeJounte and their dynamic going together. Really high assist totals, some solid scoring, obviously 2-1. But at the same time, they have not played a team with any expectations and still will not for like another week until they play the Bucks on Saturday. Their first 5 games are all against teams that most do not expect to even be in a play-in.
Yeah, like you say, they haven't played anyone great yet, and I'm going to struggle to properly evaluate this team until they get that Milwaukee, Toronto, New York, New Orleans, Milwaukee run. But from what I've seen from the first few games to begin the season, is this is again going to be one of the best offenses in the league, just slightly better now with DeJounte. There's been some off-ball action from Trey that's looked promising, but it hasn't been incorporated a ton yet, which I'm not going to be too hard on because we're only 3 games into the season. But DeJounte has looked good. Trey's looked good. They've both created well for their wings, with DeAndre Hunter especially, who I've really liked to begin the season. He's looked more comfortable off the dribble, hitting some mid-range pull-ups, hitting some floaters. He looks like he's beginning to operate a bit more of a mid-range game, which is good to see.
Yes.
And they've been operating their pick and roll well still, as per usual, with John Collins, with Capella, with the Kongwu. But their defense still doesn't look good. Their defense looked very bad today against Charlotte without Terry Rozier, which is a problem, and also without LaMelo Ball. If they commit to the defensive end, they're going to be fine. Because when I watch this Atlanta team, I don't look at them and say they're bad defensively because they don't have the personnel. I might have said that a little bit more last year, but I believe that with the personnel they have, they can be a middle of the pack defensive team, at least if they want to be. I just don't see it right now. Collins doesn't look as committed. Capella doesn't look as committed as times. Even DeAndre Hunter at times today, who is a good defender, he's shown it. The effort just wasn't there. So if they want to be a good team defensively, I think they're going to be fine. I think they can be in the playoff picture. They can probably even win a round or two if they really get hot offensively, but they need to commit defensively because I haven't seen it yet so far.
Yeah, that was kind of my worry, and I think I had them at the 8th seed in my preseason predictions, just because you kind of have to see that defensive, impact it like live and in action before you can like really bank on this team to be anything. Because last season was just so bad defensively, and I just can't expect just the addition of DeJounte to really change that. Now it is early on in the season. They definitely need time to gel, which is why I think it's okay to be playing teams that aren't really of any expectations right now, because it's a good time to, kind of gel, get used to each other, get used to Trey and DeJounte playing with each other, try and build that chemistry. But like you said, it's been a little concerning defensively already, and you would like to see that improve a little bit. But it is early, and I don't think we can really take anything away from this team right now. Even if they were playing completely lights out, defending like crazy, it would still be kind of hard to judge because, well, you're not playing against the best of competition that you're going to be playing against later on in the season. So it's kind of like a dud right now. Like, we don't really know what to expect, but I think it's good that they're getting at least those reps together, with, a new all-star added to their lineup.
You just want to hope that it doesn't result in them just strengthening a strength. I think if you see, DeJounte makes their offense even better, but their defense is still incredibly lacking, well, I think then you got to start looking at, okay, I still think that this move made our team better, but we clearly have this issue that we still haven't solved. And so I think that's going to take a little bit of a different approach across the board, whether that's in personnel or whether that's in scheming. But, time will really only tell as the season progresses and goes on. Obviously, they've only played 3 regular season games together, and defense is something that's a lot more team-oriented and I think built through reps and experience playing together in those lineups. So maybe not instant, but I think we can still be a little bit hopeful on them going forward.
Yeah, I think there's definitely still a chance for them. John Collins is so polarizing to me because he's shown he can be a good defender, but he's shown it for like a few weeks in the playoffs, and that's it. And the way this team is built, 2 things. One, I think if this team's ever going to become a contender, I think it's because DeAndre Hunter is their 3rd best player, not John Collins, which relies more on DeAndre Hunter development than John Collins being bad, obviously. But I think that's one thing that plays into it. But 2, this offense is so good I'd almost argue that this team is better off trading away John Collins for just someone who can defend at that position and can give you a little bit of shooting. Probably a worse player than John Collins, but they just need someone who can defend at the 4 spot and will defend on a nightly basis. They have enough offense. If they have someone who can be involved in the pick and roll a bit, can give them some screens, and can shoot the threes a bit, they're fine. But they needed like a Royce O'Neal acquisition would have been great for them. Even a Bruce Brown off the bench to give them a little bit more defense would have been great, who can play down a few spots in the lineup. They need someone like that who can fill that type of role. John Collins has shown he can do it, but he doesn't do it. So if Collins can be that, that's great. And I think that's going to be key for them. But if he doesn't, I don't know if that's a this season trade, but if they disappoint this season, I know we're talking about this early, we're 3 games into the season, but from a big picture scheme of things, if this team doesn't improve defensively, then I think that's a spot they probably have to look at, because the personnel is there, but if the personnel doesn't buy in, then it doesn't really matter what personnel is there.
Yeah, John Collins is really the key. I mean, you gave him $125 million because he showed he can defend, but he has to be engaged on that side of the floor. And DeAndre Hunter does too, because he is the best defender. He just got a big payday too, so he kind of has to set the tone defensively as well. And you would like to see that. I do like that he's trying to take a little bit of onus on the offensive side of the floor though, but he makes his money on the defensive side, which is why he needs to be the leader on that side of the floor.
Yeah, definitely some things to keep an eye on for Atlanta. Like you said, once they start playing some teams from next weekend and moving forward that are going to be the teams they're fighting against for playoff spots, we'll get a little bit more of an accurate idea of how this Atlanta team's going to fare this season.
Hey, real quick, Paul George is him. I just needed to say that.
Paul George is a special man.
Paul George is him. Hey, I don't remember. It might have been during like Pistons talk or something. I watched John Wall pull up from like 2-3 steps behind the 3-point line and make it. That, to me, John Wall is obviously not an all-star player anymore, but I think John Wall is back, bro. I think John Wall is going to be a contributing player for a while, whether that's just as a role player or maybe even some tier a little bit higher than that. I love seeing John Wall back, man. So just a great dude, along with a fun guy to watch on the court.
Yeah, he's looked good to start the year. I mean, we're only a game and a bit over a half into his return this season, but he's looked comfortable out there. He hasn't looked hesitant. He hasn't looked scared to drive and attack the rim. For all the significant injuries he had is honestly the biggest part, regardless of the athleticism, his ability, just the fact that we see he's not hesitant to attack, to drive, to draw contact. That's the most impressive and the most important thing. And obviously he's not prime athleticism of John Wall, but he still looks like he has a burst. He has a good quick step. He can beat guys getting to the rim. So he's going to be a valuable member of this Clippers team. His playmaking still looked great as well in his first game back, hitting guys for open threes, hitting guys on cuts. So he's going to be a very valuable member of this Clippers team. He's a very good signing for them. And of course, it's not prime John Wall, but he still looks very productive.
Yeah, he's looked really good. In the game against the Lakers, their first game of the season, he had some clutch shots down the stretch. He's playing some good defense, man. It's just good to see him back on the floor as well. And I also think like having that full season off is why he still looks like he has a little bit of burst in there, because he got that full year. Because he's dealt with some like very big injuries over like the last 4 seasons. So just, for him to have a full year to just like really recover and still, hoop on the side and, stay ready. It's good to see him back on the floor, man. And like Gabe said, I think he's going to be a big piece of this Clippers team, even if he's coming off the bench or not. I think, he's going to be a big reason why, a lot of us consider them to be a contender this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's part of arguably the best bench in the league and one of the best benches we've seen in a while. And he's going to be a big part in why they're so productive, no doubt. Let's move to another Western Conference team. I heard some rumbles that we might be out on the Kings before we started recording the podcast. So I'll get your thoughts first, Tyrik. How have you felt about the Kings so far this season?
Defensively, we knew kind of what we were getting into with that. Like we knew defensively they wouldn't be good, But down the stretch, their offense has just looked so bad. Like the game against the Trailblazers, De'Aaron Fox had an amazing game, but down the stretch, he was pretty much ineffective. Same thing with Sabonis. And it's kind of lingered, man. That's not a team that you would want to see start 0-3 because, like I said in LA, the same thing with Sacramento, man. When it rains, it really pours there. And a 3-game losing streak can turn into a 10-game losing streak to start the season. Like, that's just how things rock in Sacramento. So, I mean, it's good, though, that their offense has at times looked really good, but the defensive questions can really hurt them in the long run just because it's the Sacramento Kings. They're not all world a talented team, but they do have talent. But, man, you would definitely have hoped them to at least have a win so far this season. It's just not looking good, man. It might be time to bring back the King slander very soon.
Come on, man. We got to take it easy on the Kings, bro.
I'm just honest, man. I'm honest.
Like, giving up 130 to the Warriors, man. You know, second night of a back-to-back.
On the road
against one of the best teams in the league. You know what? I'm going to give you that. You should have taken home one of those first 2 games. You definitely should have taken home one of those. Very unfortunate that they've started like this. I still think there's some hope there because there has been some things that have looked really good. I still think that Keegan Murray's come in and been a more than decent rookie for them. Obviously, I'm high on him. But let's just say it's good for them that the Lakers also started off very poor because they're not losing any traction in that battle for the 10th seed.
You are not wrong. Yeah, like you say, Keegan Murray, first game tonight, he led the Kings in minutes tonight off the bench. He's been very valuable. And of course, only one game, but hitting threes, defending well, especially on a team where for some reason they still decide to start Okpala. I don't know why. He only played 3.5 minutes tonight, but nonetheless, he's starting, which isn't exactly ideal. Harrison Barnes also hasn't looked great to start the year, and it seems as though the thoughts on him from Kings fan just seems to be getting worse and worse. There doesn't seem to be a lot of love for Harrison Barnes amongst Kings fans right now. So Keegan Murray is definitely going to play an important role in that wing rotation that isn't exactly filled with a lot of strength right now outside of him. But outside of Keegan Murray and De'Aaron Fox, their core guys haven't looked great. Now, De'Aaron has looked good to start the year, minus, like you mentioned, Tyrik to close games, specifically against Portland the other night. Looked better against the Clippers, not as many turnovers, was able to hit some shots down the stretch. So we can see more of that than how he closed against Portland, then they'll have a better chance because I can't get mad at them for losing by 2 points against the Clippers, but losing at home to Portland, if you're fighting for a play-in spot against Portland, those are the types of games you need to win, but you just need to close out better. The biggest concern is, the defense, but that's expected, so I can't even get too frustrated at that because we know this team is going to give up a lot of points. Primarily, they need to figure out how to get Sabonis involved because Fox and Sabonis on paper is a really good duo. It fits well. Their pick and roll should be very productive. That hasn't happened yet. Whether it be Sabonis's lack of aggressiveness or lack of ability to be productive in the paint when being guarded by a wing like Justice Winslow, or just the lack of chemistry between those two, that needs to happen sooner rather than later. They don't have the time or the luxury to be able to say, let's just work on our chemistry through the first 15 or 20 games of the season. Like Sacramento needs to be firing on all cylinders now. They need to start winning games now, starting with Memphis on Thursday, and then with a Charlotte win and probably a win against Miami out of their 2 games against Miami. Like they got to start going if they're going to push for the play-in tournament, which this team is expected to do given the moves they've made. I will say their bench has shown that they have good upside. Davion Mitchell has still played very good defense. Monk has played well. Rashawn Holmes looks good as a backup center. Terrence Davis back from injury is nice to have for a little bit more scoring as well. They're going to have one of the better scoring bench units as well. They got to figure out their defense to at least a respectable degree. And most importantly, they got to get Sabonis involved more because Sabonis having 12, 14 points nights just isn't going to cut it for this team.
Definitely. He has to be all-star type form, 20 and, he rebounds the hell out of the ball. So 20 and 12, he has to be that elite because De'Aaron's been damn good so far this season. He's been really good to start the year. But Sabonis has to hold up his end of the bargain too. You like to see continued growth from like Keegan Murray, man, and Harrison Barnes to get better. But like you said, like it has to start now. And going against Memphis is not the ideal team that you would want to start, your first win of the season against, because Memphis, other than the game against Dallas, has looked really good. John Morant has looked really good, and he might feast against that Sacramento defense on Thursday.
Yeah, he definitely might. In respect to Sacramento's defense, I will say one of the bright spots there is that De'Aaron Fox hasn't looked terrible defensively this year. He's actually looked like average to slightly above average this year, but the rest of the defense is definitely not great. But I will give Fox his credit there. Fox might be able to attack the rim quite well against the Memphis defense that is not anywhere near as good this year without Jaren Jackson Jr. But yeah, they're gonna have to try and get going already against Memphis, which is tough. It's definitely a tough start for them, but they're not out of. They're definitely far from out of it. Just like the Lakers or any other 0-3 team, it's just not an ideal way to start a season for a team that has historically always been bad and needs a little bit of a vote of confidence to get going.
Hey man, you know who is in it though? Anthony Edwards in these MVP talks. I need y'all to talk to me after these back-to-back 30-point games.
We'll talk when they play a team.
Hey man, listen, that's gonna be a while. So
not wrong.
3 out of their next 4 games are against the Spurs, and the one that is not is against the Lakers. So I think it's gonna be a while before this team goes through a tough stretch. Probably a good thing for them. But man, I think they look pretty solid so far. 2 wins and an overtime loss. I think the Jazz are definitely overperforming, playing really above expectations. There's always something about that return game against your old team. A lot of times you end up taking that first little L. So, the Jazz getting one up on Rudy, okay, but overall, man, I think this team is looking pretty good.
Yeah, they do look good. Anthony Edwards had a first rough game, but since then he's looked good as you would expect. Gobert, of course, they're still trying to fit him in, but they look like they're trying to get him involved and trying to get him comfortable on the offensive end, which is nice to see. Towns still isn't looking amazing, but I'm not going to be too harsh on Towns given the fact that he did only got a shortened preseason, a shortened training camp, and is coming off a pretty serious illness as well. So this isn't just fully basketball fit and adjusting to play alongside Rudy. So I think that's going to need a little bit more time for fit and health reasons. But ultimately, we just need to see them play against some more competition. Like you say, they play against San Antonio in 3 of their next 4 games. Give it a couple more weeks, you get a matchup against Phoenix, you get a matchup against Milwaukee, and you get a matchup against Memphis and Cleveland. At that point, we'll be able to get a bit of a better idea as to how good Minnesota will be. But that being said, it is going to be important for Minnesota to pick up a bunch of wins during this stretch because this is a very, very generous start to the season for them.
Definitely. And it's like it's cool that they've been able to win some games. I think it's going to take some time for them to really gel, just to get everything going. But I think it'll come at some point. It's good Anthony Edwards is starting to bounce back because that first game had me a little worried. I'm not going to lie because he did not look good. But like you mentioned, it's good to see like Rudy, having his impact offensively too. He's been rebounding the hell out of the ball as well. I'm just going to take a little bit of time, man. I'm not too worried about them though. I think everything's going to be fine in Minnesota. They're going to win their 60 games and, our predictions will be true.
I have no doubt.
60 games is crazy, man. But at the same time, yeah, when they're going through that early season period, any sort of early season struggles, they're going to be playing teams that are still possible to beat if you struggle. So they should be kind of closer to that tip-top shape as they get closer to tough matchups.
Definitely.
Which, it definitely looks good for you guys in the narratives, man. I'm happy you guys can be accurate in that. I think predictions are still a whole 50-50 thing, though. Like, there's some predictions I've had where I'm like, that's hitting. Obviously, the Lakers struggles hit on that one, but Philly being the 1 seed missed on that one. So it's, up and down. It's a process, man.
Yeah, it's so early. So many things can change, but there's definitely some signs, like you say, you can take. Like the Lakers have some problems. Lauri Markkanen is good at basketball. Like there's some general stuff that we can definitely take away. But like the Utah Jazz are 3-0, so they're going to be a playoff team. Probably not.
Home court advantage. The playoffs are coming back to Salt Lake.
That would be crazy.
That would be crazy. Imagine Lauri Markkanen leading a team to the playoffs.
Hey, man, right now,
wild. That would be a wild world.
If the season ended after 3 games, the Jazz, Trailblazers, and Spurs would have home court advantage. So I think that tells you about all you need to know. I will say I was right on the Thunder, too. Already 0-2. They're starting to tank. If Shea is sitting by next Thursday, do not be surprised. They play against the Clippers back-to-back. And then they take the Mavericks, Magic, which is kind of an easier game. But then right back to it with Denver, Milwaukee. So this team playing some tough games. I do not think they're going to be picking up a lot of wins. And that 14 seed prediction is just gonna be right there, man. I think they are gonna finish exactly where I thought they would.
I will say, as far as OKC goes, though, Josh Giddey's looked really good to start the year. He's looked much more comfortable creating. Yes. He's looked a lot better at getting to the rim. His perimeter shot still needs a bit of work, but looks better than it was last year. That's still not saying it's great, but it looks better. So it's been positive signs from him to start the year. And obviously SGA didn't play tonight. He was out with an injury, but when we have seen him play this season, he's looked as good as he's ever been as well. So there's definitely some positive signs there, still no doubt. And the most positive signs for them is just getting another good pick and get Chet back in the court next year. But if this team had Chet, they'd legitimately be like good. But
yeah,
they need that big finisher. But once they have a big finisher on the court next year, they're going to be legitimately a good team next year if they want to be.
You're telling me it's game 3, and this man is already missing games.
Nah, he's injured. It was a home opener. There's no way they sat him. He's definitely injured. It was their home opener.
That is crazy, bro.
As much as they've definitely sat him for a few games, he was definitely injured tonight. There's no way they sat him for home opener.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm pulling you. Like, he's definitely not getting stat game 3 of this season. But to push my narratives of the Thunder playing dirty, man, just wild things, wild predictions.
Gabe despises OKC now.
What's crazy is like I was really messing with the Paul George Thunder, and then I was really messing with like that Chris Paul year. They were super fun to watch. I wanted them to beat the Rockets, and then even like when it's just Shea and Lou Dort getting buckets, I'm like, this is cool, but bro, just play your players, please. There's so much good talent on this team. Just let them take the floor.
It ain't happening.
It's like a rebuilding version of like Brooklyn, where they had like Harden, Kyrie, KD, and it was like, bro, just let them play together, please.
It's a different time, man. Did y'all see Adam Silver kind of wants to like demote teams to the G League if they are like at the bottom of the NBA?
Yeah, I saw that comment. I'm pretty sure there was then something said afterwards to the extent of like, yeah, it would never happen for some logistical reason or something, of course. But yeah, I did see that comment, which honestly, if it was set up properly, would be fun, but there'd have to be some massive structural changes for that to happen.
Yeah, thinking about the fact of like G League affiliates, it's like you can't have Raptors 905 play in the NBA, because then who are the Raptors sending those two-way players to? Where are they going? So yeah, you'd have to have some serious structural changes to where players or like the top teams can still send their players down to developmental while still allowing teams to move up and down. So that's a really complicated thing to, I think, work out.
Yeah, it would be interesting, but it would probably have to be part of a mass expansion, and you'd
Mm-hmm.
probably have to add 8 or 10 teams to this B league per se at the same time, and then that season before this league opens, you'd have to have the bottom 2 or 4 teams in the league also get demoted down to this league. So it would take a lot. It's probably never going to happen, but as someone that does follow European football a bit, it would be interesting to see. It would add a fun dynamic that I don't know if a lot of American sports fans fully understand. That just gets looked at as a negative because sure, as a fan of your team, it sucks to be in that battle. But as a neutral that just watches the sport, it gives you a reason to say, I want to tune into Houston and OKC because these guys are battling because there's 5 games left and they're about to lose out on hundreds of millions of dollars if these guys don't stay up. So they are fighting for this win, right? Whereas if there's 5 games left in the season this year between Houston and OKC, we'll be lucky if we see Darius Baisley on the court. So it would be an interesting dynamic, but I certainly don't expect it.
Thinking about those
That
fights
would be
too, that would
hilarious.
eradicate tanking. That it would literally eradicate tanking. Like
Oh,
no
yeah.
owner is willingly going to allow their team to tank, knowing that they're going to miss out on NBA money for a full season.
Yeah, 100%.
Like look at how much revenue the G League makes versus the NBA. In that situation, like yeah, nobody's gonna want to get demoted, and you would literally see every team almost trying their hardest to compete. Which at that instance, it's like okay, you're gonna see a really high level of competitive basketball, but also.
Mhm.
I think it could take away from some of those really well structured rebuilds, like in Detroit or like in Orlando, where they get to the bottom and they make all the right moves while they're there to cultivate young talent and then get back up to the top. If they're getting demoted to a whole different league, I think that just adds a whole layer to the fold that could be a detriment to them. As then the best players coming in aren't gonna play in a lower league. They're gonna want to play in the NBA. So like from that perspective, it would have its own challenges that I think does prevent it from ever happening realistically.
Yeah, that's the biggest drawback to that type of setup is it makes it really hard to climb the ladder. Like it definitely solidifies a system of here's the top teams, here's the middle of the pack, and they're a little bit more intertwined with the bottom. But it becomes really tough to get up to that top tier of teams, which is the biggest drawback. It definitely has a significant downplay on parity. It makes it fun at the bottom, but as far as, I'm excited about 14 teams to potentially win a playoff series this year, it'd probably be, now it's probably like I know the 8 or 10 teams that are winning it, and there's 4 teams that are good and everyone else is a tier below. So there's pros and cons certainly, but I don't think it's anything that we're going to be. Don't think we're going to be too concerned about it in any American sport, at least not in our lifetime.
Yo, can I say, Tyrik, I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of you.
What?
We're almost 2 hours into this recording, and I have not heard one Tatum MVP narrative yet. I haven't heard one Tatum MVP narrative yet. What's going on there, bro?
I had it written down, but I was gonna let one of y'all bring it up. I wasn't gonna be that fan. I was gonna be that fan that was excited to talk about their team being 3-0 and Tatum looking like one of the best players in the world. I wasn't gonna do that, man.
That's why he asked us about Toronto early. He was hoping he was going to ask us.
Exactly.
We were going to ask him about Boston. I didn't take the bait, but I knew why it was happening.
Guys caught me. Nah, he's looked amazing, man. The Celtics have looked really good too. Even like without Al Horford last night, like they were still able to win that game, which was impressive. Like guys like Noah Vonleh was playing pretty solid like to start the season. Sam Hauser's been getting minutes. He's been knocking down threes, which is a welcome sight. Brogdon's looked very, solid. Derek White had a big game. Marcus Smart's been defending his tail off like he always does. JB had a great first couple games of the season, put up a stinker last night, but overall the teams look very good. The game against the Bulls tomorrow, I think, will be another decent low contest. So, I'm definitely excited, man. They're making my one seed take look a lot better.
Yeah, Boston have definitely looked great to start the year. MVP talks have every right to have Jason Tatum in them, and like you say, like there's been some good production from guys that you wouldn't expect it from. Like Noah Vonleh's played arguably some of the best NBA basketball of his career. Sam Hauser's looked good. Even like I know some people weren't loving the Blake minutes the other night. I haven't hated what I've seen from Blake. Like maybe my expectations are just really low for him, but like he hasn't looked as bad as I expected him to be. Like he was okay for 5 minutes. Obviously, it'd be ideal if he wasn't in the rotation, but he's been okay if you need a few minutes here and there as well. They've got some good production from guys at the end of the bench.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. I was just going to reiterate, the Blake minutes, he's doing what he needs to do. Like, nothing crazy, but it's just good to have, some extra depth there.
Yeah, I think the thing with this team is, sure, some off-season drama, but just in the grandest scheme, this team went to the NBA Finals, and I think the general consensus coming into this season is that their roster got better. And so given that and how they finished last season playing way better than everybody else, I'm not going to say it's like expected for them to be the 1 seed by everybody. But yeah, this team, I can say I'm not shocked at all that they came in, especially for an early season type thing. For this team to be good early, definitely not surprised because these guys have a lot of experience playing with each other. They have a lot of experience playing in this system. And they have a lot of experience winning together, and especially at the highest level, which is, it's kind of give and take with at some point. You would think some teams might say, oh, it makes the regular season less important because now we've had that taste of finals action. But clearly they've come in and they haven't skipped a beat, and they still want to come out, fight hard every game, and it's really working out for them.
Definitely. Yeah. Solid start to the season, man. Tatum MVP talks, though, definitely going to be heating up soon. Tell y'all that.
Bro, went from Anthony Edwards to Jason Tatum already, man. Crazy how he switches up.
We still the agendas, though. 100%.
Hey, man. Yeah, I think it's hard to get things real set because there's a lot of players who have looked like literally like the best player in the world. And then there's some other players who are just like, what are you doing right now? And so I think we'll see in the coming weeks a lot of that balance out and come back down to earth. But who knows at this point? That's kind of the nature of early seasons. Like it's fun to react to things, but it's like you really can't be concrete about anything.
No, definitely not. I don't feel confident about anything until I'm 20, 25 games in, especially with a lot of these teams where I'm seeing Cleveland and how they fit in. I mean, Darius Garland's hardly played this year, unfortunately, due to his injury on opening night. How does DeJounte and Trey fit in? Does their defense improve? How does Towns and Gobert fit in? There's a lot of those teams, especially where it's just going to take time. But there's definitely some signs we can take early on, and just glad basketball's back, man. It's been a fun first few days of the NBA season. Haven't watched this much basketball in like 6 months. So it's been good.
Not even a full weekend, so which is just a welcome sight.
And Kevin Durant is already giving buckets to your favorite players, man. I hate to be the one to bring up Brooklyn here. Really hate to do it. Big loss to the Pelicans on night one. Really unfortunate to see, but KD and Ben Simmons came back, beat the Raptors, and they let Pascal do his thing. But hey, man, I think I've liked the way Ben Simmons already slotting in, coming in only 6 points against the Raptors, 8 assists, 10 rebounds, come in, play some defense, do some around the clock work. That's all I need, man. Kyrie Irving's He's going to come out, get his 30. He's going to get his couple assists, and that's expected. KD's going to get his numbers. That's expected. I love seeing Ben Simmons come out. And while he's probably still not looking at the hoop as much as he should be, the fact that he doesn't really have to, that's a good thing. But hopefully he ups that a little bit. But I don't know, man. Brooklyn's still a little bit of a question mark. Once again, that early season thing, They've played two teams that are pretty solid. They haven't really played anybody really good or really bad. So I'm not really sure yet. It's kind of weird when you play middle of the road teams because when you play bad teams, it's like, oh, you played good, but who really cares? And when you play really good teams, it's like, oh, you played bad, but who really cares?
Right.
So playing against these middle of the road, I don't know. It's like you need that balance of playing good teams, bad teams, and teams in the middle to get that sort of balanced observation.
Well, fortunate for us, the next 3 games are Memphis, Milwaukee, and Dallas. So we'll get to see some good competition for them, and then they'll get to see if we can dominate against the Pacers for a couple games. But like you say, Simmons has looked good, but I know it's not in his nature, but he needs to look at the rim a little bit more because I can't see this guy drive into the paint and not take a layup. I don't need him shooting threes. I don't need him shooting mid-rangers, but he can't drive into the paint and then pass it backwards for another guy to take the layup when he's got a clear lane to the rim. That's the type of stuff that I need him to start being a little bit more aggressive on because he's got the size, he got the strength. Drive to the lane and finish, get an and one, or finish through contact a bit more on an offensive rebound. That's the type of thing I need to see a little bit more. Defensively, he's looked good. His playmaking has looked good. From an early season standpoint, I've liked how they've integrated him into the offense. From a playmaking standpoint, that's only going to improve. But I just need a little bit more assertiveness from him, and they're going to need that from him as the season gets further into it and as we get into playoff time. He doesn't need to be out shooting jumpers, but teams just at least need to know that you can't give him a lane to the rim and he's not going to take it.
Yeah. One thing my dad always used to tell me when I was, coming up in basketball was you have to at least be a threat when you catch the ball. And I was actually talking to him about this last night. And Ben Simmons is not that. He's just not really being much of a threat when he has the basketball in his hands, which especially if you're at least trying to be a playmaker, you still have to put some type of pressure on the defense. And like you said, Ben Simmons has the physical capabilities to get to the basket if he wanted to. And, you would hope be able to finish those opportunities. But, he can't be out here playing like extreme Draymond Green type basketball. Like he has to be a little more dynamic as a slasher for this to work with this style of a team because this is not the Warriors. This is a different kind of team, a lot of different personnel. So Ben Simmons has to be better in that aspect.
Shout out Royce O'Neal though. He's had a very good start. He's been very influential to Brooklyn's not bad defense to start the year.
Yeah.
They obviously struggled against the Pelicans, but their defense looked decent against Toronto, and Royce O'Neal was a big part of that. KD's looked a lot more committed on D as well.
I told y'all, man, if this defense looks solid, look at Ben Simmons getting into these Defensive Player of the Year talks, man. I'm booking it now. That was my hot take.
I'll take Royce O'Neal over Ben Simmons right now.
Nah,
me too.
Nah, but here's the thing. Royce O'Neal's putting in that work, but Ben Simmons might sneak his way into these narratives. I'll say, I don't know if Marcus Smart was the best defender on the Celtics last year, but he sure won the award.
Hey, Marcus Smart in 110 defensive possessions has given up, I think, 11 points. Or maybe even less than that. It's something crazy.
But Time Lord was on a different wave last year, man. So I don't know. I think Ben Simmons could be the second best. He could be the second best defender on the Nets and still get the award. It is possible.
It is possible, but that requires him to become a better defender than Royce O'Neal throughout the season, or Royce O'Neal to become injured, and Royce O'Neal doesn't get injured.
And then historically, they have to be historically for that to happen. So I don't think that's happened.
Yes. That is also true. That is also true. But yeah, Royce O'Neal is an Iron Man, so he ain't missing time for Ben Simmons to win the award.
That's what Brooklyn needs too. The fact that he's an Iron Man, they need people that'll be on the floor.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do.
That thing.
That team up and down is just lined with the guys that get injuries. I mean, obviously KD and Kyrie and Ben Simmons are there. Edmund Sumner coming off a serious injury. TJ Warren coming off of a serious injury. There's this Patty Mills isn't exactly young anymore either. Obviously, he hasn't been too hurt by injuries, but you get to that age, it's always going to be a concern. Yeah, like you say, someone that's Joe Harris. Yeah, I mean, having someone that can stay on the court is pretty much as valuable as anything for them right now on that team.
The only man that can stop PG is Royce O'Neal.
Let's keep him far away from PG, man, because
Yes.
I need PG to pop off, bro. It's really sad, man. I think as this podcast episode continues, the Clippers are no longer going to be undefeated, dropping a game to the Phoenix Suns. Hate to see it, man.
Is that that's only their second game, isn't it?
No, Clippers are 2-0.
Yeah, it's the third.
Who else did they beat?
They played last night.
They did.
I was against the Kings. They only lost by 2.
Boys. Kings could be like 4-1 right now, man.
Paul George at only 18 is not what we love to see, but he's still a hit, man. Kawhi is still only playing like 20 minutes a game, so I do not expect this team to be at full strength yet. But Devin Booker with another 35 piece, he continues his outstanding play. That's the story of the game, man. Devin Booker was the best player on the court tonight, and it showed up in the final score. As simple as it gets. Also, Phoenix's bench actually looked pretty solid, man. Campaign with 10, Jacques Landale with 9, Torrey Craig with a light 8, Landry Shamet with a light 8. They got like 40 points off the bench, man. That's really more than solid.
I gotta watch that bench play to know if they actually played well. I've seen that bench put up numbers too many times while looking terrible. Because I know Landale can get some points. I know Torrey Craig can get a few buckets in transition, but yeah, I need to see that bench play because hey, they played good for them, but they looked really bad the other night. So
we're talking about that eye test, but all I see is a W. Solid statistics, man.
Before the episode ends, though, shout out to the New York Knicks because they've looked pretty solid. Love what I've seen from them.
Yes,
like
definitely.
the Cam Reddish minutes, man. Julius Randle looked very good, man. Looks like he's buying into the role that we wanted him to buy into. Just love to see it, man. Shout out to the Knicks.
And good signing of Jalen Brunson. He's looked very good so far.
He's not
very safe, no turnovers, good playmaking, good ball movement. He's exactly what they needed at the point guard spot.
Hey, man.
I think we talked about all 30 teams in this episode. Like, we mentioned every team in this episode.
Yeah. I really don't even think we did, which is kind of crazy.
No, we did.
This episode had like almost no Spurs talk, no Grizzlies talk.
Except maybe the Bucks, but
rarely any Pelicans talk. Rarely any Nuggets talk.
We mentioned them.
Rarely any. I don't think we mentioned the Houston Rockets at all.
Houston would have been one of the few ones we didn't mention.
Here's what
Chicago Bulls were not mentioned at all.
I saw Dev make a tweet about the Rockets that they look a lot better than he thought they would. That's all right.
They have. Obviously they got blown out against the Bucks, but they haven't been a complete pushover. KPJ's looked solid. Like, he's been consistent. He's been playmaking a bit. He's been relatively efficient. Jalen Green has been pretty good as well. Didn't have the greatest first game, but he's looked good. Bruno Fernando has been good. Like, I was surprised when they gave him the 4-year deal. I was surprised when he was their starting center, but he's been good. Like, he's been nice in the pick and roll. He's been playmaking well. He had 7 assists on game 1, and it wasn't just dribble handoffs. Like, he was making some nice passes out of the short roll. He's been a nice addition. Sengun has had some nice moments as well. I think it was against Memphis. He had a really nice game. Scoring, shooting, offensive rebounds, a very good rebounding game as well. So they've looked solid. They're definitely still a year away. Jabari Smith is not going to be the flashiest of rookies, but he's looked fine as well. He's hit some threes and done what he needs to do. They're not going to be great, but they've looked fine. They don't look like they're going to get rolled over every night, and it's pretty much all you can ask for. They've got some solid young pieces there for sure.
Doing exactly what young teams should be doing. Just may not win a lot, but we like to see the flashes and a little bit of consistency. Which, I like to see that. Jalen Green, from what I've seen, has looked very solid, other than the first game, like you mentioned. But that second game, he was going toe to toe with Ja in that first half. Like they were both going at it. So you like to see that because he was their number 2 pick. They want him to be that dynamic guard for their future. So it's good to see him taking strides.
Hey, let me show y'all the opposite real quick. Opposite of young team doing some solid things. Let me give y'all about 30 seconds of Bulls talk.
I was gonna mention them earlier, but go ahead and take the floor.
Team won the first game when they probably shouldn't have because DeMar was him. Second game, lost. DeMar was still him. First 2 games playing, they're like, we don't have Zach LaVine right now, so we just got to tread water for a little bit. Split these first 2 games. That's what they should have done. Beat a Wizards team that lost to a Wizards team that they probably should have beat. And then just being the Bulls, Zach LaVine comes back. Finally, first game at home, first game with your star duo playing together this season. Get blown out by 30, man. Get blown out by 30. It's really not looking so hot when your best player comes back, or arguable best player. DeMar's been really great for the past season or so. So basically, a player as good as Zach LaVine comes back, and then everybody else looks worse. Not what you like to see, and that is 30 seconds of Bulls talk.
Just remember, they did lose by 30 to the team that's going to be the 1 seed. So just keep that in mind.
Okay. All right.
Okay, that's a hot prediction because the Celtics play them tomorrow, so I guess Celtics are winning by 30 against the Bulls. One of the hot takes I had written down is the Bulls missed the playoffs. That's my reaction to the Bulls after
playoffs.
Is that a hot
playoffs
take?
or play-in tournament?
I'm gonna say
playoffs
because all 3 of us had them as a 9 seed.
That's
so
fine.
I don't know if that's a hot take.
That's fine. I don't know.
I meant playing, and I forgot.
Oh, playing. Okay, yeah. That's different.
I think it's possible, man. Not gonna lie.
Who do you think gets in instead of them?
Give me the Pistons, man. I think the Pistons will jump over them at some point. Okay. More solid. Yeah. That's my hot take.
Yeah, if worst case scenario,
don't quote me on that.
They could really fall below everybody except for like Orlando and Indiana. If things really went poorly,
they looked bad. Even in their win, they didn't look good. So
yeah, I think they'll still finish above Charlotte. To be honest, I feel like worst case scenario for them is still like 12 seed. But them finishing at 12 or 11, if things go right for the Pistons, if things go right for the Knicks, then it just takes like one other.
Orlando. Or Charlotte even, if their offense is clicking enough.
Maybe the Wizards. Maybe the Wizards, man.
Maybe the Wizards. I can't even talk.
No.
That's the sorry, Wizards fans, but you are literally the only team in the league I can't get excited to watch right now.
No.
Which day one sucks, but that is stuff. I watched the Wizards today because they played the Cavs, but that is the only Wizards basketball I had watched. They were the last team I watched my first bit of action from, and yeah. The only team, unfortunately, there's nothing that makes me excited. They drafted a guard in the lottery, and he's getting D&P coaches' decisions. And that's just the state of the Washington Wizards right now. Shout out to Rui. He's looked decent, and he's the only guy I'm mildly excited about on this team. But, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Wizards.
What about Kuzmania? You're not excited about Kuz?
No.
Wizards are 2-1, and it's because they beat the Bulls without Zach and the Indiana Pacers. They went to OT with the Cavs, which is kind of impressive, but they got Pistons and Wizards, and then this team is going to start losing some games. They got Celtics, they got Philly twice, Brooklyn, Memphis, Mavs in that stretch, Grizzlies again in that stretch. This team, they look 2-1 because they got some easy couple quick games, but if they go like 3-2 into that tough stretch, this team is going to fall quick, just like they do pretty often, where they start off a season pretty hot and then it's just straight downward trajectory.
Yeah, like that game looks a lot closer tonight than it should have been. Cleveland were the better team comfortably all night, but they did play some good defense for the last 3 minutes. But Mitchell made some questionable decisions and had a few poor turnovers forced on him that gave them a few easy buckets. So it should have been a lot more comfortable than it was. And I mean, even still, for an OT score, it doesn't look like it was that close. And that's pretty telling of how it was. But last shout out I got to give before I'm done for my shout outs before we wrap it up. Spurs, I don't expect to continue to be over 500, but Devin Vassell has looked quite good. 3-point shooting, catch and shoot, and shot creation. Keldon Johnson has looked more comfortable in the mid-range. He looks like he's finally starting to develop that third layer. Joshua Primo's playmaking has looked a lot better than last year. He looks a lot more comfortable on the ball. And who's the fourth guy? Oh, Trey Jones. That's the other guy in the Spurs I wanted to give a shout out to. He's looked like solid as a starting point guard, which is nice to see. He's just a nice, fundamentally sound point guard. Play makes a bit for them, gets to the rim, not shooting many threes, but shout out to them. They've had some nice development from their young guys so far this year and are a nice talking point that won't get talked about after beating the 76ers.
Man, hey, Keldon Johnson narratives are about to get pushed crazy for me, man. Dude rebounds the ball like crazy especially for being 6'5". 20-point score on 40% 3-point shooting. And I don't know if he's gonna be a season long 40% 3-point shooter, but can that man shoot the ball? Oh yeah, he can shoot and he can rebound. He's gonna be in the league for a long time. That man is nice.
6'5" might be generous. Dude's like 6'4", maybe.
Yeah. It's so funny because Sohan has been starting, and yet they still list Keldon Johnson as the 4 and not Sohan. It's like Sohan has like a 7-foot wingspan at 6'7", 6'8". Like, how is he not the 4? It's so funny.
Shout out to the Spurs, man. Pop just continues to find a way to make teams win, I guess.
Apparently. Little did we know that him saying to not bet on the Spurs to win the title was just bait.
I'm looking at it now, like, bro, Keldon Johnson was 39.8% from 3 last year. So, like, he wasn't a 40% 3-point shooter, but he was a 40% 3-point shooter, man. So,
yeah,
I'm surprised.
7 attempts for a good.
He's averaging so far this season. He's 41.7% on 8 attempts. So 42% on 8 attempts a game. He's came out hot. And I mean, numbers look like 1 more assist, 1 more rebound, 4 more points. But I think given you lost an all-star and more attention's on you, if I'm doing nuance in the MIP discussion, he's still in that conversation.
Yeah, it's like you say, he's the number 1 option now. There's more attention on him, and even though he shot really well from 3 last year, those percentages are really boosted from before he was shooting 7 or 8 attempts per game. Like once he started shooting 7 or 8 attempts throughout those 3 or 4 months, he shot about 34% from deep. Just still fine when you're shooting 8 a game, but the fact he's now shooting over 40% at 8 a game, developing more of a mid-range game, yeah, he's looked really good to start the year.
Oh, got a shout out, man. I talked about him earlier. John Morant's expanding his game. He's added the mid-range pull-up. I love seeing that from guards. Trae Young did it last year. John Morant's doing it this year, man. And he's other than them getting the shit beat out of them by the Mavs the other night, he's been in MVP mode, man. He's been hooping. So, shout out to Ja because I was low on Memphis, but maybe Ja is just taking another step forward to make sure they're still in the thick of things in the Western Conference.
Definitely. Great start to the season from Ja.
Yeah, I already knew about Ja, man. I really didn't need him to prove anything to me as far as how good he could be. Not surprised at all that he only continues to improve because as good as he was last year, that was year 3. So, I mean, year 4, Ja Morant, I think he's not even – I guess you could say close to his prime because players get there a little bit quicker these days. But the fact that he's, 22 years old probably and playing like this is –
He's probably like 23 now. He was a college for years.
He was a college. So I always forget that because Ja's always young guy showing out so early. But let's see. Yeah, he's okay. Yeah, he turned 23 in August, so he's a young 23. But I mean, regardless of what you say about him, dude is nice. He is nice. He's nice, and that's kind of the running mantra of this episode. Is like, It's been 3 games, so a lot of guys look really, really nice. But Ja is definitely keeping his name up there with the best of them, like he did last season.
Either really nice or really bad. No in between.
It's always the best part of a new season. Get to see all the development, all the rookies. That's what I'm always looking for.
Old faces, new places. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, y'all. It is here for mine and Tyrik local time. It is 12:36 a.m. I think we busted out a nice little good length episode, but I think it's about time to wrap up here.
That would indeed be a wise decision.
The truth.
That being said, be sure to let us know your thoughts on the first few days of the NBA season, and a beginning of the NBA season that I've certainly enjoyed a lot. That had a lot of good moments, and also some notable teams that have fallen down to the bottom of the standings. With that in mind, let us know down in the comments if you think the 76ers will lose another game to a bottom of the Eastern Conference team and the Pacers on the day that this will be live. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week for another episode. Peace.